Desert Heart, 1985. This film, directed by Donna Deitch, is loosely based on a book by Jane Rule. I learned about this story by following Safi, one of my friends on social media on the Threads app. She's passionate about the history of queer women, and every day she posts about a queer woman, usually who has either been born or died on that particular day. All of the people she writes about are now dead. There's some absolutely amazing stories out there. It's something I look forward to every day, to read about someone new. Safi's going to be writing a book on this. That's going to be really fascinating. Through her post, I found out about Jane Rule and the book, which was made into this film in 1985. It starts and ends with a train journey. The main character is 35-year-old Vivian Bell, played by Helen Schaefer. She gets off the train at Reno Station. The reason she's come to this desert town is because she's just had a divorce. And strange rule is, during the divorce proceedings, she's not allowed to leave the state of Nevada. She has to confine herself. So she's picked up by Frances, played by Audra Lindsay, who is recently widowed. She relies a lot on the company of her son, Walter, now grown up, and her daughter, who lives close by as well. Now, Frances and Vivian seem to get on fine at the start. It's really hot out in the desert, and they drive out to the ranch where Vivian's going to be staying, and on the way they meet Kay, who is quite a different character. Kay is played by Patricia Charbonneau, and she's amazing. She's about 10 years younger, 25, but she's coming the opposite way. She sees the car that Frances is driving, and she drives alongside the car at reverse speed, so she's going alongside Frances and Vivian, and that's quite an opening early on scene. Really loved it. I don't know how you can switch from going reverse at high speed to suddenly go forward when a car comes the other direction, because she's hurtling along at this speed, but she suddenly switches back. Yeah, she's quite an amazing character. I warmed to her really early on, and I kind of warmed to Vivian as well. She's an English professor, Columbia, New York. I haven't looked it up. Pardon my ignorance about American universities. Kay and Vivian hit it off early on as good friends and something more than friends. They have something of a relationship, and it blows hot and cold. There's an awful lot of disapproval. The setting is the early 60s. I've just seen another film from that era, Priscilla, which I'd like to talk about at some point. All these films give the impression of how austere and how difficult life was for women, but also in particular LGBTQ. If you're a queer woman back at that time, the only person who uses the word queer does it in a bit of an anti-LGBT description, and that was certainly the case in the 70s and 80s when I was growing up. I know a lot of people don't like the word queer still, but now I'm embracing it, as it's good to reclaim the words, I believe. So Kay is tough as nails. She gets treated appallingly by the men who fancy her. There's one in particular who tries to chat her up and gets the cold shoulder and just doesn't take the hint. She's got this great deal of confidence. At one stage, she explains to Vivian what this confidence is about. It's her way of dealing with not to change the world, but to stop the world from changing her. That is such a beautiful quote. I love the way the two main characters bond. There's this camaraderie between the different women in the group. One or two of them are homophobic, nasty comments, LGBTQ phobic. There's the whole background of the need to save reputations. It is really tragic. Vivian works in a university, and she worries about what the students will think. She worries so much about what others are going to make of what will probably get seen as an indiscretion if the news gets out. Heartbreaking. I've seen this film twice now in the space of 11 weeks. I wanted to see it again as a refresher because I delayed reviewing it. To review a film, it really helps when you've just seen it. One thing I found out in the mid-80s, it was still considered risque for actors to play lesbian roles, especially with elongated relationship scenes, kissing, making out scenes. Kudos to the actors in this case. There were barbed comments from some of the men. One comment directed at Kay, because she has other women staying over. One man says, "How come you get so much traffic when you've got no equipment?" There's this barbed edge all the way through from some of the heterosexual characters. They police the norm. They've got what they consider the moral high ground, and they look down on queer people. It's very upsetting to see these days, but you look back at the historical context, well, it was much more common back in the 50s and 60s. It's only gradually over the decades that things have improved, and yet there's still a huge battle going on. With Vivian and Kay, a lot of dialogue that goes on throughout the film. It's done with so much feeling. There are some elements of the dialogue that I probably got better second time round. I'm not au fait with everything. I'm asexual, so I just don't really have relationships. I don't understand all of the nuances, but I can see how it was done, the sort of chemistry. These two actors really showed how the affection developed between them. They played the roles well. There were fallouts. There's a sort of flipping and flopping between, will they get together? Won't they get together? Vivian leaves Reno at the end of the film, and that's the train scene at the end. The question is, she's been trying to persuade Kay to come with her. There's Kay saying, "You've been saying goodbye from the beginning." I find that heartbreaking, because you actually realise the underlying feeling that's going on. In a more enlightened age, I guess they wouldn't have thought twice about getting together, because they had such strong feelings for each other. So I'm going to score this 8.75 out of 10. I loved it, really enjoyed it. I'm so glad I got to see it. It's one of my top 10 from the films made in the 80s, I would say. I love seeing the mid-20th century, getting the vibe of that era, the music, popular music. There's a scene early on with the Clash over whether to play classical music or Prokofiev or some rock and roll. I think there's going to be a lot more of that now, but back then, I suppose young people would be like, I want to play pop music, rock music, that kind of stuff. So thank you, Sophie, for posting about Jane Rule, leading to me seeing this, another wonderful 20th century film. If you've seen it, I'd love to know any thoughts. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Please like if you like this. Bye for now. There's probably other stuff I could say about it. I made some notes. I actually lost the first lot of notes I made from 11 weeks ago, back in November.